Hello, I'm Virgil Hayden-Pawlowski, political scientist and blogger, and I'm here at York University in Toronto, Canada. I've been invited to speak on Rumah Demokrasi on Binus TV in Jakarta, Indonesia, about the recent American general elections. So, the American general elections of 2012 have now passed, and along with it, some of the anxiety over who the next 4 years of American policy, governance, and diplomacy will be shaped by. The 2012 general election in the United States comprised of several elections for different parts of federal and state governments. The ones which occurred on November 6th, 2012 were the presidential election, which occurs every 4 years, the Senate election, which is the upper house, and the House of Representatives election, which is the lower house. Both house elections occur every 2 years. As well, there were several state governorship elections, as well as several elections for state and territorial legislature also occurred at the same time. With so many seats up for grabs, outcomes of the elections could result in significant policy redirection at many levels of government if the balance of power has shifted from one party to another. Not to mention the fact that voters in the United States can actually directly create new state laws during the general elections, and they did. However, in the different levels of federal government, the 2012 general elections didn't see a majority power shift between the two political parties.
But marijuana was legalized in 2 states and gay marriage in another 2. Surprise, that's direct democracy. But contrast this electoral structure to Canada, where there is no election for the head of state by the electorate. Rather, a candidate for prime minister is elected only by members of each political party. There are no elections to the Senate, that's the upper house, but rather appointments by the head of state for essentially lifelong terms. Federal elections for the House of Commons, that's the lower house, happen almost whenever the ruling party or majority of the lower house decides to have them, up to 5-year terms. And provincial elections occur every 4 years, but not necessarily at the same time as federal elections. Indeed, the picture in Canada is quite different, perhaps more consistent government, but certainly less democratic by design.
In fact, the government of Indonesia has a lot more in common with the democratic structure of the American elections, with its simultaneous presidential, DPD, the upper house, DPR, the lower house, elections every 5 years, but staggered provincial elections. The American president, who is elected indirectly by state electoral colleges and not by popular vote, is the executive power of the American government, in addition to having veto power over any bill that has passed through the Senate and the House. The Senate and the House, while different, each need the approval of the other to pass bills and hand them off to the President for approval to become laws. After November 6th, the Senate has remained majority Democrat and the House majority Republican. Got it? Okay. So, indeed, a lot was at stake on November 6th. But how can we explain how President Obama achieved this victory, and what other realizations has this election brought? The youth vote continues to play a key role in President Obama's campaign success, as it did in 2008. 60% of young Americans who voted in this election voted to re-elect President Obama, and young voters made up 16 to 19% of the American electorate in this race, an increase of 1% from 2008.
Apparently, Republicans had counted on youth making up no more than 15 to 16% of the electorate in order for Romney to win. But placing your political bets on youth not coming out to vote on Election Day proved a detrimental decision for his campaign. Another surprising lesson from this presidential election is the role of ethnic minority votes in the United States, which favored Obama. In context of infamous racist laws in the Republican-governed state of Arizona passed in recent years, yes, I think it's no surprise President Obama won the ethnic minority vote. But here is the surprising part. Mitt Romney won the white vote and lost the election. That's right. Only 39% of white Americans voted for Obama, and 59% of white voters sided with Romney. So, as much as it may distress Republicans, especially in Arizona, it seems that simply winning the white vote, still the majority ethnicity in the country, isn't going to win you the election.
They will simply have to warm up to immigrants, especially the Hispanics in Arizona. It's also noteworthy that nearly 70% of voting Muslim Americans, who make up just less than 1% of the American population, sided with Obama this year. But explanations for this will have to be saved for another discussion. I'm Virgil Hayden-Pawlowski. Thank you for having me on Rumah Demokrasi on Binus TV. Terima kasih.